What if I told you that the same mental framework that helped Marcus Aurelius run the Roman Empire could solve your biggest leadership challenges in 2026? Today, we're cracking open one of history's most powerful intellectual toolkits and showing you exactly how to weaponize ancient wisdom for modern chaos. While everyone else is peddling surface-level productivity hacks and feel-good mantras, we're going deep into the intellectual DNA that has shaped Western civilization for over 2,000 years. This is history of the mind, and we're starting with the one quality that separates leaders from followers, builders from destroyers, and legends from footnotes. But first, let me ask you something. When was the last time you made a decision based on fear? Maybe you didn't speak up in that meeting. Maybe you avoided that difficult conversation with your team. Maybe you played it safe when you knew you should have taken the risk. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to hear. Most people aren't failing because they lack talent or opportunity. They're failing because they lack the mental architecture to act courageously when it matters most. That's exactly why we need to stop treating philosophy like some dusty academic exercise and start treating it like what it actually is: the ultimate performance enhancement technology. Today, we're diving into one of the most misunderstood concepts in human psychology and showing you how to transform it from a vague ideal into a precision instrument. See, here's what most people get wrong about building mental toughness. They think it's about pumping yourself up with motivational speeches or forcing yourself to feel fearless. But that's not how the greatest minds in history approached it. They understood something that modern self-help completely misses. True strength comes from having a system, not just having feelings. That's where our framework comes in. We're using Mortimer Adler's Copicon as our filing cabinet for this entire series. Adler spent decades identifying the 102 great ideas that have dominated Western thought for 25 centuries. These aren't random concepts pulled from the air. These are the intellectual building blocks that every major thinker from Aristotle to Einstein has grappled with. Think of it this way. If you wanted to understand music, you wouldn't just listen to random songs. You'd study the fundamental structures that make all great music possible: rhythm, harmony, melody. The Copicon does the same thing for human thought. It gives us the underlying architecture that makes all great thinking possible. Today, we're opening the file on courage, but not the Hollywood version you're used to. We're talking about courage as the ancient Greeks and Romans understood it, as a precise mental technology that can be learned, practiced, and systematically deployed. Here's where most people go wrong. They think courage is about feeling brave. But according to Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers in history, courage isn't an emotion at all. It's a calculation. It's what he called the golden mean, the exact point between two destructive extremes. On one side, you have rashness. This is action without thought. The executive who makes impulsive decisions without considering consequences. The entrepreneur who bets everything on a gut feeling. The leader who charges ahead without a plan. Rashness feels like courage, but it's actually just chaos wearing a confident mask. On the other side, you have cowardice. This is thought without action. The manager who analyzes every decision to death. The business owner who has perfect plans but never executes them. The leader who sees exactly what needs to happen but never pulls the trigger. Cowardice disguises itself as prudence, but it's really just paralysis with a fancy name. True courage lives in the narrow space between these extremes. It's what Epictetus called the fortress of the mind. Not because you don't feel fear, but because your logic is stronger than your nerves. It's the ability to remain unshakable when everyone around you is losing their heads. But here's the key insight that transforms this from philosophy into practical application. You can't build this fortress randomly. You need a blueprint. That's where the risk audit comes in. Every fear in your life falls into one of two categories. The first category is uncontrolled variables. Market crashes, economic uncertainty, other people's opinions. political chaos, industry disruptions. These are what the Stoics called indifferents. Not because they don't matter, but because you can't control them. Here's the brutal efficiency of Stoic thinking. If you can't control it, worrying about it is a waste of mental energy. It's like being afraid of the weather. You can prepare for rain, but you can't stop it from falling. Spending emotional capital on uncontrolled variables is like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. It doesn't matter how much you pour in, it's never going to hold. The second category is controlled variables. Your character, your word, your response to events, your preparation, your decision-making process, your commitment to your principles. This is where your courage belongs. This is where you have actual power. The risk audit isn't about eliminating fear. It's about directing it intelligently. When you audit your fears, you stop wasting courage on things that don't matter and start investing it in things that do. You stop being reactive and start being strategic. Let me give you a practical example. Let's say you're facing a major decision that could make or break your business. The amateur approach is to either rush in blindly or freeze up completely. The Stoic approach is different. You audit the variables. What can't you control? The economic climate, your competitors' moves, market conditions, customer preferences you can't predict. You acknowledge these factors, you plan for multiple scenarios, but you don't let them paralyze you. What can you control? Your research quality, your decision-making process, your team's preparation, your response if things go wrong, your commitment to learning from whatever happens. These become your focus points. Once you've done the audit, the decision becomes clear. Not easy, but clear. You've separated the signal from the noise. You've identified where your actual power lies. Now you can act with what the Stoics called confident uncertainty. You're not certain about the outcome, but you're confident in your process. This is what separates legendary leaders from everyone else. They don't have less fear. They have better systems for handling it. They don't feel braver. They think more clearly. They've built what Epictetus called the fortress of the mind, and once you've built that fortress, there's nothing left to lose. Because here's the final piece of the puzzle. Once you've secured your character, once you've committed to responding with integrity regardless of circumstances, once you've done everything within your control, the outcome becomes secondary. Not unimportant, but secondary. You've already won the only game that actually matters, the game of maintaining your principles under pressure. Everything else is just data. This is why the great Stoic leaders could remain calm in crisis. Not because they didn't care about results, but because they had already secured what couldn't be taken from them. Their courage wasn't dependent on external validation. It was built on internal certainty. So here's your action step. Tonight, do a risk audit on your biggest current challenge. List everything you're worried about, then categorize each item as controlled or uncontrolled. Be brutally honest. Then look at where you're spending your mental energy. I guarantee you'll find you're wasting courage on uncontrolled variables while neglecting the controlled ones. That's the first step in building your own fortress of the mind. Because in the Legacy Republic, we don't just survive chaos. We use it as raw material for building something greater. If this framework is already shifting how you think about leadership challenges, hit that like button and subscribe for more History of the Mind episodes. Next week, we're diving into the great idea that built empires and destroyed them: power. You won't want to miss it.